The galaxy had long believed that humanity was an exaggeration. Stories of deathworlders had circulated for centuries, often dismissed as tales spun by smugglers, mercenaries, and fringe scholars. Yes, humans had a reputation for survival, for war, for cruelty when cornered, but most in the Galactic Empire considered them a minor nuisance. The Empire ruled thousands of species, crushed rebellions without effort, and had erased cultures that had once seemed unshakable. To them, Earth was just another primitive world hidden on the edges of map space. They cataloged humans as dangerous but ultimately containable. The myths were entertaining, but the Empire believed it was above myths. And so when 2 human children were taken, the galaxy trembled, but the Empire laughed. The abduction was not grand in scale. To the Empire, it was routine. A colony world of little consequence was raided. Its defenses overwhelmed in moments. Resistance was met with orbital bombardment. Civilians were herded, sorted, and selected. Among them were the 2 children, a boy and a girl, siblings no older than 8 or 9. They were terrified, but they did not cry in front of their captors. That, more than anything else, unsettled the alien soldiers who dragged them aboard the transport. Most species begged. Most species screamed. Humans stared, eyes wide but unbroken, as if even in childhood they carried the fire of their kind. But soldiers of the Empire did not pause long enough to reflect. They were following orders, and the children were nothing more than specimens, test subjects, trophies. They did not understand the weight of what they had done. The children were taken across the stars, their small hands bound, their voices silenced by language barriers and the suffocating presence of armored guards. In the sterile halls of the Empire's facilities, they were cataloged as biological curiosities. Scans and probes followed, and scientists whispered studying their immune systems, their muscle density, their rapid neural development. To the Empire, they were resources to be exploited, nothing more. To everyone else who heard the news, they were a spark threatening to ignite a firestorm. Word spread not through official channels, but through whispers. Smugglers carried it in their hushed conversations at border stations. Traders muttered it as they avoided Imperial patrols. Minor species, long subdued under the Empire's heel, recoiled in shock. The words passed from mouth to mouth with growing dread. The Empire had taken human children, not human criminals, not soldiers, not prisoners of war. Children. There were species who still remembered what humanity had done in its first encounters with the galaxy. They remembered warships built from repurposed freighters, humans fighting on poisoned worlds without protective suits, humans making weapons from wreckage. They remembered how humans had once gone to war not for conquest, but for vengeance. And those who remembered began to tremble. They asked themselves the same question. If 2 children were gone, who would come for them? The Empire dismissed those fears as superstition. Officials mocked the idea that one, or even many humans could challenge their authority. "We hold dominion over half the known galaxy," one governor declared. "Do you think a single species, fractured and backward, can oppose us? They will do nothing." His words echoed through broadcasts, his laughter shared across comm channels. But even within the Empire's own ranks, soldiers muttered uneasily. Many had fought humans before. Many had seen comrades die not to advance weapons, but to sheer human audacity. They remembered stories of soldiers burned alive who still fired until their last breath. They remembered humans bleeding out and yet charging, teeth bared, with nothing but a blade. They remembered that humanity did not stop. The captured children themselves became silent symbols. They did not speak the Empire's tongue, but their eyes followed everything. They watched their captors with a steady intensity that unsettled even hardened guards. They did not break down into sobs, as so many others had. They whispered each other in their own language, a private world the aliens could not breach. And in those whispers was an anchor, hope that someone was coming. Their mother. The mother's name was not spoken openly in the galaxy. She was a rumor, a warning, a story shared by mercenaries in dim-lit bars, told by pirates who swore never to cross her path again. Some said she was a soldier, once part of Earth's special forces, who vanished into the stars after her war. Others said she was a smuggler, a bounty hunter, a killer who never left survivors. To some, She was nothing more than a myth. But those who had seen her work, those who had survived by accident or mercy, whispered a title that chilled even hardened warriors: the Huntress. She was not the strongest, not the fastest, not armed with the Empire's technology, but she was relentless. Once she set her sights on prey, nothing stopped her. And now the Empire had taken her children. In the Outer Rim, smugglers laughed nervously when they heard. "The Empire's finished," one muttered. "They just don't know it yet." Another leaned closer, voice lowered. "Do you know what it means to take her children? They might as well have burned their own throne world. She'll come for them. She'll come for all of them." And for the first time in generations, pirates and traders alike gave the Empire a wide berth, avoiding their patrols not out of fear of imperial wrath, but fear of being caught in the wake of what was coming. The Empire continued its arrogance, issuing proclamations that they would dissect the humans for knowledge, that they would unlock the secrets of their biology. To them, it was triumph. To the galaxy, it was suicide. The mistake was not simply in the act, but in the underestimation of what it meant. Humanity was dangerous in war, but humanity was unstoppable in defense of its own. And there was nothing in the universe more dangerous than a human mother whose children had been threatened. The aliens had no cultural equivalent, no reference point for the absolute, unwavering drive that parenthood gave humanity. In the Empire, offspring were replaceable, nurtured communally or discarded if unfit. To most species, blood ties were weak. To humans, they were everything. The Empire did not and could not understand that truth. They believed the children were isolated prizes. In reality, they had invited their own annihilation. For weeks, the children remained in captivity. Their captors experimented, poked, and prodded, marveling at their physiology. Reports were sent to Imperial Command, speaking of fascinating discoveries. But always, in the background, unease grew. Supply convoys began disappearing on fringe routes. Patrols went silent. Outposts reported strange incidents. Guards slaughtered without alarms triggered. Ships stolen with surgical precision. Messages intercepted and corrupted. The Empire dismissed these as pirate activity. Yet those who knew better, those who whispered in the dark, recognized the signs. The Huntress had begun to move. The galaxy held its breath. The Huntress entered the Empire's domain as a shadow. No records trace her departure from human space. No official logs showed her movements. Yet ships vanished in the dark, and stations fell silent one after another. She knew the Empire would be waiting for fleets, armies, grand battles like those of old. That was their strength. She would not fight them on their terms. She would hunt. She had no warship, no armies, only her will and the knowledge that her children lived somewhere behind the endless steel of the Empire's grip. That was enough. The first strike came at an outpost guarding a trade route. The soldiers stationed there had grown lazy, secure in the belief that their patrols would never be challenged. They watched the stars with boredom, confident that their strength alone was deterrent enough. They never saw her approach. By the time their alarms rang, their communications were cut, their supply ships gone, their command chamber filled with the sound of tearing metal. Survivors told conflicting stories. Some claimed she appeared from nowhere. Others swore she moved faster than their eyes could track. All agreed she spared just enough lives to ensure word spread. Fear was her chosen weapon, and she planted it in the hearts of her enemies like a seed. Whispers turned to panic as reports of her attacks reached Imperial Command. Patrols vanished. Convoys sent to investigate were found drifting, their crews slaughtered with ruthless efficiency. She left marks in blood and wreckage, but never evidence that could pinpoint her identity. Yet those who saw her and lived recognized the truth. They spoke of a human woman, her eyes cold and merciless, her hands steady as she carved through squads of trained soldiers. They spoke of a predator that stalked them not for survival, not for war, but for vengeance. And they trembled, for no alien could understand vengeance as humans did. The Empire tried to dismiss her as a pirate leader or mercenary, but the stories grew too consistent to ignore. She never struck for wealth. She never lingered to loot. She came, she destroyed, she left silence behind. Her attacks followed a pattern invisible to Imperial strategists, but clear to her. Each strike disrupted a chain. Each wound cut closer to the center, where her children were kept. She dismantled supply lines, sowed fear among commanders, and shattered the illusion of security that held the Empire together. For every garrison destroyed, more soldiers feared being assigned to the next one. For every officer executed, more whispered that perhaps the legends of humanity were true. The Huntress was turning the Empire's own power against itself. The fear spread fastest among the lower ranks. Soldiers began to mutter prayers, some adopting human phrases scavenged from old battles as charms of protection, not knowing their meaning. Commanders threatened punishment, but punishment could not erase dread. Entire units deserted, convinced that being stationed along her path was a death sentence. The Huntress became not just a killer, but a phantom in the collective mind of the Empire. To be assigned near her hunting grounds was to be marked for death. Her adaptability was unlike anything the Empire had faced. She used their weapons against them, dismantled their machines, and repurposed them with terrifying ingenuity. A railgun meant for starship combat was torn apart and rebuilt into a planetary cannon. Explosives were wired into traps that turned corridors into killing fields. She moved through environments that no sane soldier dared enter: radiation zones, vacuum breaches, toxic atmospheres. Where aliens faltered, she thrived. To the Empire, technology was mastery. To her, technology was raw material for creativity. Every system she touched became a weapon. Every weakness she found was exploited. The Huntress proved that superiority in numbers and firepower meant nothing against a single human armed with will and imagination. At first, the Empire tried overwhelming force. Fleets were dispatched to sectors she was believed to be in, legions deployed to guard vulnerable worlds. Yet her strikes continued, not against strength, but against oversight. She bypassed their might entirely, slipping through blind spots in their arrogance. She chose her ground, never where they were strongest, always where they were weakest. By the time fleets arrived, she was gone, leaving only ruin. The Empire's commanders screamed for tighter control, greater discipline, harsher punishment. All it achieved was exhaustion and more fertile ground for fear. It was not long before her legend outgrew her actions. Stories circulated among the conquered species of a human huntress who could not die, who bled fire, who turned even a void of space into her ally. Many knew these were exaggerations, yet they spread unchecked, because the truth was no less terrifying. Those who faced a return haunted, their words hollow as they tried to describe the unrelenting gaze of a predator who would never stop. Every retelling amplified her presence, until her shadow stretched across the galaxy. The Empire had not only created an enemy, they had created a myth. The Huntress herself did not care for myth. Her every thought was narrowed to the goal of reclaiming her children. She remembered their laughter, their small hands holding hers, the softness of their voices when they spoke to her before sleep. She remembered the colony burning, the sound of gunfire, the moment they were taken. Those memories were fuel, a constant fire that never dimmed. She did not rage blindly. Rage wasted energy. She was cold, calculated, every step designed to carve a path closer to them. Her vengeance was not reckless, but methodical. She was not a berserker charging without plan. She was a huntress dismantling prey piece by piece, never faltering, never pausing, never allowing weakness. The children were alive, and until they were safe, nothing in the galaxy mattered. Her strikes escalated. Small outposts became garrisons. Garrisons became fortresses. Entire planetary governors found themselves dragged from their chambers, their guards slaughtered, their rule ended in minutes. Imperial archives were broken into, files stolen, routes uncovered. The more they tightened their grip, the more she slipped through, cutting deeper. She began leaving messages in human script carved into metal and stone, unreadable to her enemies but recognizable to her children. Each mark was reassurance. She was coming. The Empire's leaders began to panic. For the first time in generations, they faced an enemy they could not intimidate, bribe, or crush with overwhelming force. They poured resources into hunting her, mobilized bounty hunters, offered fortune for her capture. None succeeded. Those who tried were found dead, their weapons turned against them, their ships drifting in the void. Some were spared, left alive with just enough strength to crawl back and spread the story. The Huntress did not hide from her legend. She fed it, using fear as a tool sharper than any blade.